Welcome to the April 2025 edition of the Inside Nutley Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Greco, and today we're going to talk with James Piro, a township native son, a member of the 1960 Nutley High School championship football team, and founder of the esteemed Nutley law firm, Piro, Zinna, Cifelli, Paris, and Genitempo. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Jim, you've been practicing law for almost 60 years, multi-million-dollar commercial transactions, acquisitions and mergers, commercial real estate. What has been your most interesting or challenging case?
Well, when I was a very young lawyer, I was a public defender, and I had a first-degree murder case where I was second chair, but had material responsibility, where the defendant, I was 27 or 28 at the time. He was 2 months younger than me. He was an African-American kid who grew up in Passaic. Wound up on the streets, at an early age, had a drug addict mother, no father, typical situation back then in the early 70s. And he was being tried for first-degree murder of, there was a Jewish couple that lived above a store in Passaic. And he and another guy were told that they kept money in an apartment above their store. They went there armed. The couple resisted. The other guy, not my client, the other guy panicked, shot the husband dead, wounded the wife. They somehow, and I forget the details, he was identified. The other guy was never identified. He was tried, and we thought we won the case. The jury was out 3 days. They came back and found him guilty of first degree and did not recommend clemency or mercy, and he was sentenced to the electric chair. 10 years later, he got out. He turned state's evidence against the other guy and a wise guy, mafia guy, who allegedly had given them the information to go to the apartment to rob the Jewish couple. And they indicted the wise guy and the guy who actually did the killing. And he was the principal witness. And their defense was, this guy made a deal with the prosecutors and he'll say anything to get out of jail. They were found not guilty and he got out of jail.
Wow.
10 years later. He did 10 years.
Wow.
Today, he could not get a capital punishment. Well, first of all, New Jersey doesn't have capital punishment anymore. Today, he could not get capital punishment because in order to get capital punishment in any state or any federal, it can't be based upon felony murder that you were a participant. You have to be the person who actually commits the murder in order to get. Now you can spend your life in prison by being an accomplice, but you can't get capital murder. So I keep threatening to write a book about that case.
That's a pretty stark case to start out early in your career.
Yeah. When I remember when the verdict came in, my knees buckled. We really expected him to be acquitted. My knees buckled, and we went back into the holding cell where he was behind bars, and me and my partner who tried the case were in tears. We were crying. And he said, he was consoling us. He told us, I couldn't have gotten a better defense if I spent $1 million. It was really remarkable.
That had to give you some kind of a good, in a bad situation, a good feeling, though. You did your
job. By the way, I got, you get to know these people and, right, wrong, or indifferent, you empathize, you root for them. If he grew up in Nutley and went to Nutley High School, he would have gone to college. He was as smart as me, maybe smarter.
All right, we're going to go back in the time machine. Where were you born?
Well, I have an issue with this. I read in the obituaries, people say they were born in Newark because they were born in a hospital in Newark. When people ask me where I was born, I say Nutley, but of course I was born in the hospital in Newark, St. Barnabas Hospital in Newark. It was in Newark at that time.
I think that's like almost every Nutley native says that, right? We're born in Nutley, but we're all actually born in Newark, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess Clara Miles is later. So you lived in Nutley from day one?
From day one, we lived upstairs from what is now White Oak Pharmacy. There were two apartments above White Oak Pharmacy. We lived in the back one. The pharmacist, who was a guy by the name of Fred Testa, and the name of the pharmacy at the time was Testa's Pharmacy. We lived upstairs, and he lived in the front apartment with his wife, and we lived in the back. It was a great place to grow up because not only was it a pharmacy, they had a soda fountain. So you could sneak in there, and Mr. Testa would give you an ice cream soda, or what a New Yorker or a New Jersey is?
Yeah.
They call them egg
Yeah.
creams now. We used to
Yeah.
call them New Yorkers in New Jersey. So he would sneak you one. He was a nice man. God rest his soul.
So were you a Washington school kid?
Oh, yeah. I used to walk to Washington School with the African-American kids from Passaic Avenue, me, Sylvester Moore, Artie Taylor, Morel Malloy, Jimmy Malloy. They would walk from Passaic Avenue. Just think about it. They used to have to go from Passaic Avenue all to Washington School. They'd get to Union Avenue. They'd call me. I'd run down the stairs, and we would walk to school together. My parents bought a home on Glenview Road, which is at the top of Chestnut Street. And we moved there when I was just starting second grade. So I did kindergarten and first grade at Washington School. Then they bought this home on Glenview Road, 18 Glenview Road. And that's where we grew up. There was no Radcliffe School, so I went to Spring Garden School. And, every day, my mom didn't drive at the time. She eventually learned how to drive. And my father used to work every day, obviously. So we would walk to school, get out for lunch, walk home, walk back to school, and walk back home every day. Every day. Summer, it was snow, rain, it didn't matter. That's how you got to school. There was no such thing as people taking you to school. It was a whole different world. And my best buddy lived right across the street, a guy by the name of Tony Zappia. And there was another kid that lived one block from us, Joe Weiss. He was great halfback. I don't know if you remember the name. He went to Lehigh University, captained the Lehigh team in his senior year. Lives in Salt Lake City, Utah now. Anyway, so we used to walk back and forth. And of course, we'd always get back early to play ball, whatever ball it was, basketball, baseball, touch ball, whatever it was, That was our deal.
Just you, your brothers Charlie and Jay, or is it more people in the family?
Yeah, three boys. Yeah, we were 4 years apart. Yep. Charlie went to Radcliffe School because just as I was graduating sixth grade, they opened Radcliffe School. So he went, I think, starting at second grade, he went to Radcliffe.
What was Nutley like growing up in the 50s?
It was the best. It was the best. Let me tell you about what kind of town Nutley was. There was a guy in town by the name of J. Wesley Toulouse. He owned an insurance agency. Does his name sound familiar?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So I was a junior in high school. This is the kind of town Nutley was. I was junior in high school. I get called down to the guidance office, and guidance person says, you and Jack Strout, remember Jack Strout? He was all-state center, all-county pitcher, went to Columbia, had a distinguished career there. Anyway, you and Jack Strout, there's a couple in Nutley. Every year they take two juniors to Colgate University for a weekend to introduce them to Colgate University because their son went to Colgate University He died in Korea. He was a pilot. He was shot down and died in Korea. He was like 22 or 23 years old, maybe a little older. And so every year they would take, Colgate was all boys at the time. They would take two guys from Nutley High School. So I never met the people. They picked us up on Friday night. They took us up there for the weekend. We stayed in the fraternity house. They took us back. Imagine what a beautiful town Nutley was. People do things like that. Just randomly pick two kids. I mean, I don't know how we were recommended. I was the president of my class. I don't know if you know that. So maybe that was it. But I don't know how Jack was chosen.
So you go through the school system, and then you're one of the first students to go to the new Nutley High, right?
Well, we actually went to two different schools. We started out in the old Nutley High as sophomores. And then we went back to the new Nutley High, which was the junior high school. We had been there for 3 years. So we did sophomore year in the old Nutley High School, which I loved. That was just a beautiful building. Really, I still love it, John Walker. Yeah. And of course, I love John Walker. So we were one of the first, we were a second class to graduate from there.
Speaking of high school, I have some pictures to run by you. I want to see. I'm going to show you some pictures. You tell me what first comes to mind. All right?
Yeah, okay. Oh, what does it say? A moral, sensible, and well-bred man. Wow. That's a lot to live up to, huh?
I'd say you have.
I like the pin.
Oh, yeah. What is it? Is that a Nutley pin?
No, that's what we wore. We wore those tie pins in the tab collar.
Okay.
Look, I had hair.
Why Pudge though? I don't. Were you chubby?
Oh, that wasn't really my nickname. That was George Hasselhoff. George Hasselhoff and I, we became friends in second grade. We were, when I transferred to Spring Garden School, he was the first guy I ever met, and we stayed friends. We made a pact to go to college together. So he gave me the name Pudge, but no one ever called me Pudge, ever, just him. That was the only guy, and he must have talked somebody in on the exit, the
your
staff,
book
to put it into the book. Yeah. I had forgotten Pudge was in there. He was the only guy that ever called me Pudge.
And Carol, of course, you married, right?
Oh yeah. She was the captain of the cheerleaders. I was the president of the class. We started dating in 8th grade. She asked me to go to a dance at ITT Clubhouse. They used to have a formal there. One of the service clubs used to run a formal for 8th graders. I actually had to borrow a suit. I didn't have a dark suit, so I borrowed a suit from Eddie Puliteri. And that was our first date. My father drove us to ITT. And we've been an item ever since.
So how many years married?
So it'll, in this August, we'll be married 60 years.
Wow.
At least 25 years of marital bliss. At least.
And 3 lovely daughters, correct?
3 wonderful daughters, Jamie, Jenny, and Jody. And they have given us 7 beautiful grandkids. Beautiful.
That's amazing. All right, how about this one?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was the president of class. I was president of class freshman, sophomore, freshman, junior, and senior, or freshman, sophomore, senior. I forget which. I was vice president one year. I don't know how that happened. And the guy I beat in the election for president was Joe Weiss, my best buddy.
Wow.
And he still resents me.
Are those alligator shoes?
Probably.
I mean,
I don't think alligator, but we wore wing. What do they call them? Flyweights. We used to buy them at Doors down in Newark.
You were a fashion plate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen. My brother owned a men's shop, so I always had good clothes. All
right. How about this one? 1960 state champ.
This the thrill of my life. Number 77, that was me. We played together since the nucleus of that team played together since second grade at Spring Garden School. The Bobby Wolfart, the Albie Hallam, the Joe Weiss, the George Hasselhoff, the Tony Zappi, and and then obviously there were other guys who got on that team, but it was just a fabulous time. Most of us, that senior team, which won 8-1, was state champs. We mostly all played as juniors because the junior class didn't have a lot of talent. They had some, but not a lot. So most of us played. Yeah, there I am. So we learned the sophomore, when we were sophomores, I dressed as a sophomore. There were about 10 or 12 of us who dressed. And those guys, that team was 8-1 as well. That was Jimmy Ippolito, Mike Geltrude, Sandy Stoddard, Mark Hallam, that whole crew, Vinny Zinna. They taught us how to win. In our junior year, we learned how to play. We wound up 5-4. In our senior year, we were unbeatable. We just had a fluke loss in Orange. I talked to Carmen DeLoya 2 weeks ago, and we were still lamenting losing it. Carmen fumbled the ball once in his entire football career on the 1-inch line in Orange, and that turned the game around.
I wish I knew that when I played for him. I could have used it against him.
Yeah. Carmen was really very, very talented.
Now, you've seen over 6 decades of Nutley football. Was that the best team ever?
Well, I don't know if it was the best team ever, but listen, you want me to go through the guys who were on that team and what they accomplished?
Sure.
So, Benny Hawkins, don't have to say anything more.
Explain.
All-American, consensus All-American Arizona State, Philadelphia Eagles All-Pro. By the way, if Benny had listened to me and signed with the Jets instead of the Eagles, just think about it. The year before Benny signed with the Jets, Namath signed with the Jets. Namath made 3 slow white guys Hall of Famers. How good would Benny have been with Namath?
Oh yeah, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Tom, this is the truth. You can't make it up. It's the truth.
Why do you think that team is kind of lost to history? Because you don't hear much about them.
Well, I think about the team, and I can't remember the year, but it was the team that my nephew Joe Piro played on. That probably had the most talent. They lost the finals of the state championship to Randolph, if you recall. I don't know if you were at the game. I think we were robbed. But anyway, they had the most talent. So I think that was a great team, too. The team that, when we were sophomores, that team with Jim Ippolito and Vinny Zinna and those guys, that was also a great team. Great team. I also like the 1954 team. Also a great team, 7-2, but really great team. Lost 2 games to East Orange and Montclair, number 1 and 2 in the state, both by a score of 13-7.
Did you have any special teachers, coaches, or mentors?
Yes, Coach John Biviano came to Nutley when I was a freshman. That was his first year. I think John Biviano was probably about 25 years old. He had graduated Denver University, spent 2 years in the Army, and then his first job was at Nutley High School, and he was the freshman coach, and had a huge impact on my life. Sensational guy. I was a captain of the team. He befriended me. He became a client of mine, believe it or not, in later life. Not believe it or not, it was a no-brainer. We were like buddies, He was a moral guy and taught me work ethic, taught me to do the right thing. He was a guy that's always taught you to do the right thing, you know. And my father died when I was a freshman. It was after football season. I was 14, just 14, turning 15. It was in February of my freshman year, and John Viviano, from the day my father passed, became my go-to guy. You know, he was, when you needed a guy in your life. Yeah, I had uncles who also did that, but John Viviano was my guy, you know. When I get to college, my freshman year, I went to Lafayette with George Hasselhoff. We made a pact. We were going to go to college together. We were roommates. I actually played ball at Lafayette. And for freshmen, you know, creative writing, everybody gets that creative writing course. Everybody's getting C's and D's and flunking. I'm getting B's and A's. And had a professor, I'll never forget him. He said to me, "What's your major?" I said, "Political science." I said, "Why?" I said, "I want to be a lawyer." He said, "You're missing the boat." He said, "You have an acumen for writing and reading." He said, "You should be an English major." He said, let me just tell you this. And this is a story I've told a lot of kids. He said, "If you're an English major, for homework, every single night, you're going to be reading the greatest things ever written. Might not be your first choice to read, but what you're going to be reading for homework, people are going to be reading for pleasure." And he was right. And college for me was a joy. All my English courses, I enjoyed every one of them. Go home and read a novel, go home and read some poetry. Are you kidding me? It was terrific. And I've given that advice. And by the way, for law school, in my opinion, well, if you want to go to law school, your major should be what you're going to get the best grades in, because that's what they look at. But in terms of preparation, English major is by far the best, because what are you doing as an English major? You read, analyze, and write. That's what you do in law school. You read cases, you analyze them, you write. So.
Wait, when did you know you wanted to be a lawyer?
Another funny story. So back in the day, mothers stayed home. They didn't work. You know, most of the mothers were home. So in second grade, they have Mother's Day. It was in spring, and they bring the mothers in, and they're all sitting in a circle, and they each ask each kid, "Stand up, say your name, and tell us what you want to be when you grow up." And of course, they did it in alphabetical order. So P, kind of near the end. So who wanted to be a cowboy? Who wanted to be a fireman? Who wanted to be a policeman? Some kids wanted to be garbage men. The girls wanted to be nurses and teachers. You know, back then, that's what young girls wanted to be. When they get to me, I stand up, "My name is James Piro, and I want to be a lawyer." So that night, I get home after school, and I said, "Why did you say you want to be a lawyer?" So, "I don't know." She was almost like an accusation as to why would you say that? You know, "I don't know." So for some reason, Tom, that's what I said. And from that day, I had the goal of being a lawyer, and never changed.
That's pretty crazy. I don't think I've ever met anyone who knew that far back what they wanted to do.
No, and believe me, that's a true story. You can't make it up. But it was my chosen profession, and it's been a labor of love. I mean, I know that's said by so many people, but in my case, it just has been the most rewarding for me. You know, it's part of my DNA. I was meant to be a lawyer.
All right, so you graduate in '68, and then you found Piro Zinna. What was the initial first?
Well, so after I graduated in '68, I went to work for 1 year as a law clerk in Passaic County for Judge Crane, who was a Nutley guy. He lived up on North Road, next to the church, next to. So I went to work for him. He was the assignment judge in Passaic County, and so I clerked for a year, and then I had been promised a job with a Nutley law firm. It didn't work out at the very last minute. I was out of a job. Carol was pregnant. So I go to Judge Crane and say, Judge, I need a job. What should I do? He calls the public defender in and he says, Dick, you know Jim Piro? Yeah, he's a great kid, he says. He said that he needs a job. He said, I can't hire him. He said, I can only hire Passaic County Democrats. He said, Tony Grassi runs the county. So he goes, Dick, you're gonna hire Piro or else you're gonna have to do. He said, Judge, I'm gonna be in trouble, but Dick, you're gonna do this for me. So he hires me. And then he became a mentor. And I fell in love with the guy. He was a little guy, foul mouth, tough as nails, treated me like a nephew, called me the will o' the wisp. And, I spent 4 years there trying a lot of cases as a public defender. My caseload from day one was 400 cases.
Wow.
When I get the job with the public defender, it's called prime time, which means you had to be there whenever they needed you, always. With a 400 caseload, there was never time. But you could have a practice on the side, supposedly nights or weekends or whatever. Well, that's why his name was Schiffman. Dick Schiffman used to call me the will o' the wisp, because whenever I could, I ran away from the courthouse and went to the office because I was working. So I started. My brother was just building the Franklin Men's shop, him and Paul Barbarullo, the new building, and they had offices upstairs. So I said to him, can I get an office? And they said, yeah, we'll give you an office. And I said, I don't know if I'll be able to pay it. I said, pay us when you can. That was the deal. And I forget, the rent was reasonable.
Right.
So Michael Viola and I became Piro and Viola. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, we became Piro and Viola. So I did that for 4 years, and we were building a practice, and I was busy from the beginning. And Tommy, believe me when I tell you, the Italian-American community in Nutley, especially the Italian-American businessmen, those guys made me successful. They were so proud of a young Italian-American kid being a lawyer. It was a big deal back in those days. That they were sending me, they were giving me their business and sending me business. So I was busy. And then Carmen Orecchio was elected mayor. Tony Drolis was the town attorney. He dumped Drolis, asked me to be his town attorney. I went to Dick Schiffman and said, Dick, I got this offer. I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to give you any notice. He hugged and kissed me like I was his nephew, wished me well. He said, are you kidding me? Do what's best for you. But, I was always trying to do the right thing. Anyway, so I became the town attorney for 4 years. I had no idea about municipal law, not a clue. Nutley is a commission form of government, works under the Walsh Act. First thing I did was I read the Walsh Act. So I think I can handle this. Everything I need to know is in here. And by the way, I was also the prosecutor. Back then, the job was both prosecutor and town attorney.
What is your opinion of our form of government? I mean, it's very unusual. I think we're only one of less than 5 in the state.
Yeah, well, it's a terrible form of government, but it works in Nutley. It's a terrible form of government. It's got all of the potential for bad government. Each department has its own budget, that they have their own employees. I mean, there's no head, there's no administrative head. There's no town manager or anything like that. But it works in Nutley because, and I mean this sincerely, through my whole life, starting with when I became town attorney in 1972, we've had sensational people who've been the commissioners. they handle government like, their departments like they're being paid. You get a guy like Joe Scarpelli or Tom Amaro Tucci or Tom Evans. Those guys are running those departments like they're executives and they're being paid. The Carmen Recchios and the Frank Cacciolos and the John Lucys, all these people over there, Sam Battaglia, Walt Smith, you name them. These guys were serious about doing the right thing for Nutley. So it's worked. It's not a good form of government. If I was starting a town, it would be the last place I would go. Last place. But it's worked for Nutley. You see how hard Joe Scarpelli works. You see how hard Morrow works. You see how, really, Tom, you see what goes on. It's,
It's thankless.
And that's what I say. The Commission form of government stinks because there is no ultimate person responsible, no manager, no administrator, right? But in Nutley, it works because those guys are responsible. And quite frankly, I really believe it's because of tradition. Those guys watched the people who preceded them, how they handled themselves in office. The Frank Cacciolas and the Carmen Recchios and the John Lucys and whomever. It's become cultural. There's a culture in Nutley for the commissioners to work hard and do a good job. And they do. And by the way, Tom, you go to every town in our area, there's been scandals and corruption. Never a scandal in Nutley. Never. No corruption.
But you don't see it until you're up close. I've been here 60 years, 64 years. I never realized how hard they work and how much they do for how little they get. It's I would never do it.
It's true. And the truth of it is, other than a little ego trip, there's very little in it for them.
Ever think of running for commissioner?
Did I think of it? Yeah. The truth of it, I always had ambition for higher office. I actually always wanted to be a congressman. I wanted to run for U.S. House of Representatives, but it never aligned.
A lot of your career has been dealing with politics, whether up front or behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We're today's world, politics is a dirty word. How have you seen it change, and why do you think it's changed or gotten so bad?
Well, back in the day, and this may sound corny, but we were always motivated by good government was good politics. Always motivated by good government was good politics, meaning let's do what's right governmentally, and politically we will eventually win because the people will see that we were for good government, so it wound up being good politics. I don't know, somehow or another today it's all about, it was country, party, personal. Now it's personal, party, country. Everybody's worried about getting reelected. That's their first priority. I was a guy who practiced politics my whole career in exactly the way you said. I was a guy that helped candidates get elected. I was town Republican chairman for 30 some years, but we didn't only use partisan politics. Nutley's as a nonpartisan form of government. There was never a time when I was involved in getting people elected to the Board of Education and the Commission, all for the right reasons. We wanted the right people there.
You were the counsel for the Nutley Senior Citizens Complex. Were you involved with that from the start?
Day one.
Tell me about it, because that's an incredible project.
Oh, so we wanted, there was a need for senior housing. We didn't know how to do it. We started the process. We hired some consultants. And again, it was something I didn't know a thing about, learned from scratch. And finally got HUD financing with the benefit of these consultants. And we built the building and put 135 tenants in or whatever. and it's been successful ever since.
What keeps you going? And I mean, why haven't you retired?
Well, I am retired mostly. I work like hell when the project is going on. And then I don't do anything until something else comes along that interests me. And I'm 82, so I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do it. I'm still good at what I do. I know that sounds immodest, but it's the truth. I don't know how long I will be.
All right, quick hits.
Yeah.
Favorite Jersey Shore town?
I live in Seagirt.
Why?
Oh, I love Seagirt. Listen, I miss living in Nutley. We had a summer home in Seagirt, since 1995. And we finally retired there, but I love Seagirt. It's just a beautiful town.
All right, next one. It's usually Springsteen or Bon Jovi, but I'm going to change it for you. I'm going to say Springsteen, Bon Jovi, or Frankie Valli.
Not even close. Valley. Not
Did you ever
even
meet?
close. Not even close.
Did you ever meet Frankie?
Sure.
Yeah, good guy. Because he lived in Nutley for a little while, right?
Tom, he used to be a customer at Frank Clement's shop.
All right, Giants or Jets?
Giants.
Yankees or Mets?
If you're a Giant fan, you're a Yankee fan. My first Yankee game, 1951, Sunday afternoon, doubleheader. My father takes me and Jay to the ball game. Joe DiMaggio in center field, Mickey Mantle in right field. You think I'll ever forget that? I was 8 years old.
As a member of one of our township's iconic families, what are some of the things you love most about Nutley?
I love the Oval. I love the whole central area. I love the fact that when people from Nutley, they bury their anchors deep. You know, there's generations of people in Nutley that we still know. It's home. You know, everybody knows your business, but most people are looking out for you.
How do you think the town's changed?
I miss Hoffman LaRoche. I miss ITT. Having those two huge, national companies having campuses in Nutley was phenomenal. I miss the tower. If I was involved at the time, I would have saved that tower. The town would have owned that tower. It would be a monument.
Yeah.
Nutley still has a reputation for being a good town, good government, safe community, good school system. It has that reputation. And we have some beautiful areas. The Anaco Park section of Nutley, I mean, you can't find a prettier area anywhere in North Jersey. It's as good as Upper Montclair.
Where else can you walk through the whole town or through the park?
Yeah. Oh, from one end to the other. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And the park system in Nutley is superb. Over the years, the commissioners have been in that department, kept the park system just terrific.
Is there anything or anyone you miss most?
Well, Frank Kajolo was my guy. He was my mentor. No one had a bigger impact on my life other than my father and my parents. Forget about family. I'm talking about people outside the family. No one had an impact on my life like Frank Kajolo. He was my mentor. And he did treat me like a fourth son. He used to always say I was the fourth son. He's a special guy. I keep a picture on my desk, and he's a special guy.
How's Nutley influenced your life?
In every way. In every way. I mean, from the education to my career in politics. When I ran for the Board of Education, there was an outpouring of support. And then, as I say, when I started my practice, there was an outpouring of support from Italian American businessmen and other people, and the policemen, my political friends. Then they got me elected to office, and then they gave me the pleasure of having a say in what goes on, as a person involved in supporting good things,
What are you most proud of?
So I can't answer that with one single thing. It's got to be a couple of things, because my children and my grandchildren are my biggest pride. Three daughters, 7 grandkids, all special. Never once did they do anything other than make me proud. I've been lucky. In the best of families, you have issues with children and grandkids. I never had one, so I'm most proud. I'm also very proud of the law firm that we built. We built it waited for my first client to walk in the door. The quality level of Piro Zinna, and this is immodest, it's incredibly high. And I would like to think that a lot of it came from people taking a view of how I handle things and took the lead, and the work ethic too. They work hard, and I always worked hard. I was always motivated by a passion for my clients. If they put something on my tombstone, that would be what I would say. He had a passion for his clients. I did. It was never about the money, Tom. The money came, don't get me wrong. I made a great living out of being a lawyer, but it was a passion for my clients. Right. I'm also a little proud of that 1960 football team.
As you should be.
Carmen DeLoya has a picture which he made for me. I'm scheduled to see him when I get back. Last game of the year, we play Kearney. Thanksgiving Day. And we go to Kearney. We're 7-1, a big favorite. And George Hasselhoff was the captain for every game, but every game they would pick someone else to be captain with them. And there were a bunch of seniors who hadn't been picked yet. And so they put us in a hat and they pulled out, and I was the captain. And in the Star Ledger the next day, on the front of the high school picture was a picture, big headlines, Nutley tramples Kearney, as a picture of Carmen with the ball running around end, me ahead of him, big 77, ready to throw a block. And it was some proud, happy times, Yeah.
It's a great memento to have.
Oh, yeah. We still get together.
Jim Piro, thank you for doing the Inside Nutley podcast, and thank you for everything you've done for the town of Nutley.
Thank you, Tom, for giving me the opportunity.